My head is spinning right now. And I understand why people are living in denial out there. I know why people don't want to believe this is really happening. Tyranny comes in incrementally. It happens slowly. It's creeping death of our society. But the prognosis, any way you slice it, runs from bad to worse. And I don't know if they're going to cap the oil well anytime soon. I don't know how devastating it's going to be when the majority of that oil gets blown in by those hurricanes. I don't know if they're going to launch an attack on Iran, even though the mainstream media says they're gearing up to do it, and it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. But I'll tell you what I do know. I know that we're all becoming acclimated, even if you're against all this evil. At some level, we're all becoming comfortable with it. We're becoming accustomed to it. We're becoming accepting of it. And that's why we really can't approach this emotionally. It's good to get emotional and angry to get moving, but you have to follow up with focused, cold determination. You have to make it a goal to wake up as many people as you can and to defend this republic and to restore this republic, whatever it takes. Because I realize reading this news this morning that I don't even want to cover it. Believe me, I want to just walk away and go hide out in a farmhouse somewhere and just make the commitment that anybody comes here and tries to violate my rights, they're going to have a problem. But you know what? That is a loser mentality. You cannot run and hide from this. You've got to meet it head on. It's the only way. Because I know the government shipping in the narcotics. I know the government is totally criminal. I know they've engineered a depression and that we're in a depression, and now the mainstream media is admitting we're in a depression. I know that the establishment is adding sterilants and toxins and carcinogens by design to our water and food. And I know that my children deserve to not drink that, and I'm going to stop these people. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take some of your phone calls, specifically for people that have any intel on evacuations. Have you been told they're preparing for forced evacuations in areas of the Gulf? Or have you been told when you're working in and around this that that's not being planned? Do you know what the mitigation program is when this 100+ million barrels of oil gets blown in by the hurricanes that are now forming? We're going into the tropical storm/hurricane season. 1-800-259-9231. And I realize what it is. I started the show and I read these headlines. Dow repeats Great Depression pattern, CNBC. Here's a London Telegraph article. With the U.S. trapped in depression, this really is starting to feel like 1932. Then I look at these headlines. This is out of the Globe and Mail, out of Canada. Happy 4th of July. America needs it. The Great Republic is in a perilous state, politically and economically. And there's all these articles about how the United States is tottering towards collapse, complete collapse. Now, we've known this was happening for a very long time, and we knew what the causes of it would be, mainly false debt, derivatives, and we knew it was by design. The very same central banks have done this in smaller third world nations, by smaller GDP. And so we know they've done it over and over and over again. They're just going after the biggest target they've ever hit. And if they're able to complete this conversion from liberty to total tyranny, it's going to be hell. I mean, do you have any idea? And I'm asking myself that right now. I'm not just asking you. Do we have any idea what it's going to be like to be in a third world police state in a nation of spoiled brats, many of which don't want to work, that have been living off people who do want to work? And with all of the gangster mentality and all of the glorification of crime and just the immorality, can you imagine in the Great Depression, right at 90% of people lived in rural areas, and most of them were self-sufficient. Their own chickens, their own cows, their own orchards. They knew how to put canned food up. They knew how to skin a buck and run a trot line. A country boy can survive. Well, today, right at 90%, the roles are reversed, of the population lives in urban areas, and only half of the 10% that is truly rural is self-sufficient. 5% of America knows how to feed themselves. What do you think is going to happen to those 5%? You're going to be overrun. Crime exploded during the Great Depression. Can you imagine what is going to happen here? And we know what the government's going to do. They're all living in offshore armored compounds in the Mediterranean and the Caribbean and the South Pacific on record. They were all evacuating 4 years ago because they designed what we're about to go through. Comprende? That's why when I get up here and I talk about this not being a joke, folks, it's not. I get white-knuckled, okay? I have nightmares over this. I look at my children, and they're so innocent and so beautiful and so good, I start crying now. And not sobbing, just tears involuntarily start coming out the edges of my eyes. And it makes me so mad at the New World Order. And on the 4th of July, I cried because they've destroyed this country. They've destroyed everything we ever are and ever were. All right, we're into hour number 2, 1-800-259-9231 on this July 5th, 2010 edition. Bob in Michigan and others are holding. I want intel on Gulf evacuations. A month and a half ago, I saw reports that evacuations had already begun. I made phone calls to the supposed towns, and it was not true. But just when I'm about to say, oh, great, that's not the case, I have this article out of prisonplanet.com where oil industry insider and CFR member predicts Gulf evacuation. We're going to have to evacuate the Gulf. Can you imagine evacuating 20 million people? This story is 80 times worse than I thought. That's the Washington Post. Now, I'm not blaming people that are running around like chickens with their heads cut off, because when the hurricanes blow that oil in, it's going to be bad. And the feds have never allowed berms or anything to be built to stop even the little bit of oil that's come in per capita. And it's treason, it's criminal, but they think we're so dumb, they're allowing it to happen. So, I'm going to open the phones up and see if we get any good information. In fact, guys, will you give me a pen? All I have is a Sharpie. I want to write notes when people call in so I can check what they say. And the Sharpie will bleed through. Thanks a million, Matt. Great. 1-800-259-9231. But then I'm going to really boil down the position we're in and what's happening with the economy and what I believe is going to happen next and what I think we can do to counter these criminals, because they are now, just like in 2007, they started getting everybody ready for the controlled housing implosion as the cover for the engineered depression. And now they're telling you we're in a depression and get ready for total collapse, which means they're strongly considering pulling the plug. I mean, we're already circling the toilet bowl slowly, but they're starting to accelerate that. And so, and of course, we would expect with a new war and with a full-blown depression, an economic collapse, they would shut down the web. So they're getting all the couch potatoes ready for that, telling them how essential it is every day. So things don't look good. I'm going to be honest with you. We've been building towards this point for the last 15 years that I've been on air, trying to warn you about the bankers and what they've done to every other country they control. And here we are. We're in a good position to fight them, better than we would have been. Because we have been here speaking out and because we understood the globalist game plan. But we're still in very, very dire straits. I mean, when I say we're in a better position, we're ready for the punch that's getting thrown in our stomach. It doesn't mean it's going to feel good. At least some of us are ready. All right, I'm going to go to break and come back so Bob doesn't get cut short and go to Bob in Michigan and others. But if you've got any intel, or if your husband's out on an oil rig and he's been told some information you want to tell us, or you're a police officer in the Gulf, and I'm sure you've asked, what are we going to do when the oil comes ashore? What have you been told? Or are they keeping that information close to their vest? It was compartmentalized. The mere fact that they're not preparing for an evacuation, or at least telling lower-level personnel, that tells you as much as not being told what they're planning, because they should be planning for different contingencies.